What's going on, ladies and gents? Welcome back to another episode of Two Guys and a Trailer.
What's going on, everybody?
I'm going to turn my microphone down just a little bit so nobody complains about it. Oh, and get it out of the shot here. So, what's happening? Sorry we missed last week. Mr. Garlington was on death's door.
Like very close to death's door and knocking.
He said it was pretty rough, so I take his word for it. So tonight, obviously, talking about The Irishman, and I think it's going to be a good little conversation.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a good one. So, this is a movie that I have watched now 4 times in its entirety, front to back, start to finish, end to end. And I've only done that because I want to be as thorough as I possibly can and as objective as I possibly can. And when you watch a 3.5-hour movie 4 times, you would imagine it kind of tends to get stale. So that's where the real subjectivity is going to come out. And I got to admit, about the 3rd time I watched it, I started noticing stuff that I wasn't a huge fan of.
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's start off with everybody's favorite part of the show. Garlington, what do we got as far as stats go?
All right. So, The Irishman, directed by Mr. Scorsese, one of the best directors of all time.
Martino Scorsese, for those
exactly.
Of you keeping.
It was actually based on, and I didn't know it was based on a book called "I Heard You Paint Houses."
I Heard You Paint Houses. That's why there was that's why there were the flash screen.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Stars Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci, a.k.a. Baby Yoda, as Pesci. Ricky Gervais affectionately referred to him at the Golden Globes, which was hilarious. Distributed by Netflix, and the budget for this movie was $159 million, and the box office was $8 million. Which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that really doesn't give you the full scope of, how it did. So I also found the audience viewership, and it says that The Irishman was watched by 17.1 million people in its first 5 days of digital release in the United States. And 3.9 million of that was on the debut day. That's lower than previous Netflix originals like Bird Box, which had over 26 million its first week, but it's not too far off. It had more than El Camino, which was the Breaking Bad movie. Let's see what else. I'm trying to find about 16% of all Netflix account holders watched the film within the first week of release. So it was the 4th most watched Netflix film of 2019 and the 5th most popular Netflix release overall
of all time.
So
what were that's an interesting little tidbit. What are the 4 that were more watched than that one?
Well, one was Bird Box. And I think the other one was that Cloverfield movie.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure what the 3rd one was. But, I mean, Bird Box was fucking huge when it came out.
I never watched it.
I never did either. But, so, I mean, it didn't do bad. I mean, shit, 17.1 million streams within the first 5 days of release. That's pretty fucking good.
Well,
but it's also kind of hard to measure what a successful movie is in this field.
So doing some quick math, right? 17 million times that's 17 million people watched it.
Mm-hmm.
right? Those 17 million people pay $15 a month for Netflix. I mean, that's pretty good numbers. That's 170. Let's see, that's 170.
If every one of those people,
250, yeah, $255 million.
yeah, 255 million. Now, obviously, you can't say that movie made $255 million,
Yeah,
right? Because how many of these people already had subscriptions? But I think the way that Netflix looks at it is they release a movie like this, and people maybe that were going to leave the service keep their subscription another month. That's another $15 for a person, and you get 10 million people that are in that boat, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's 150 million. So I mean, it's kind of it's the interesting thing about these movies. It's like, how do you judge whether or not they're a financial success?
I don't know, man, because if you look at Disney Plus, right? Disney Plus opened up with serious fucking problems as far as the streaming service went, and I'd love to see what their numbers were.
Oh yeah,
but it's all original content. They own the rights to a quarter of the fucking movies made. Yeah. So I think it's more of a yes, we have the money and we have the pull to produce a movie that has Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. It's directed by Martin Scorsese. It's got all the names you want to find in it. We have the ability to do that. So why not? Like Ozarks. Ozarks is one of the best TV shows ever, in my opinion. Yeah, it's one of the best. And it's a fucking original.
Yeah.
And another thing about streaming services is they don't have any FCC guidelines to follow. They don't have any limitations on story, on anything. Like, for example, Dear White People. That could never be made on cable or network. Never could that be made. It would die on the cutting room floor. It'd die in the fucking pitch meeting. So, I think the era of Netflix making movies like this is it's a step in the right direction. I can tell you that.
I think. The evolution has come full circle, right? For Netflix. When Netflix started out, it was you get DVDs sent to you through the mail, either 1 or 2 or 3 a month, and you paid a certain amount, right? And now then it becomes this streaming service where you're just streaming stuff that is already created and they get the rights to, and now they're creating their own content.
Yeah.
Right. They're creating. So, I mean, and I think it was a necessary evolution because of competition, right? Like Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Hulu. You have all of these other streaming services that started coming in.
Yeah.
And offering originals, right? Hulu originals or Amazon Prime originals. Amazon Prime really was the one that started pumping out movies. Yeah. And Netflix kind of had to start doing its part, right? The first ones were kind of flops, but
you look at things really like House of Cards. Right? Mm-hmm. House of Cards literally is the only reason I stuck with Netflix for as long as I did. And then by the time the next season came around, right, I was already used to paying that $15 a month. So I just never fucking canceled it.
Yeah. And I mean, like for me, it was Breaking Bad. I got a Netflix so that I could watch Breaking Bad because everybody kept talking about how great Breaking Bad was, and I had never seen it. So then, the $15 and you can binge 8 or 7 seasons of a show,
Yeah, back
and then it was
to
like,
back.
well, fuck. Around after that was right after when House of Cards came out. I started watching that. That was a fucking great show for a while, and then you kind of just stick with it because that at some point they're going to release something that you're going to want to watch. Yep. And at the price of one movie.
Yeah. And Mike and ST were kind of hammering me about, you got to watch Ozarks. You got to watch Ozarks. You got to watch Altered Carbon. You got to watch Lost in Space. And Ozarks, I was like, I don't know about that, man. It doesn't seem like, until I watched it. And then I was like, holy shit,
Yeah.
Why did I wait so long?
That's a great show.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah.
a really underrated show too.
Very, very. But let's get into this. So, what did you? Okay, actually, pause right there. There's also a complimentary, like a sidecar episode called "The Conversation." Right? Did you watch that by chance?
I didn't watch that.
Okay, so that is an essential have to watch because it's Joe Pesci, it's Robert De Niro, it's Al Pacino and Martin Scorsese. They're sitting there having a drink, just chilling and talking about the movie. Some of the interesting little stuff that you may have looked past. And I watched it 2 times, and then I watched the conversation after it. Then I watched it again, and I started to see some of the stuff. They have some of the most state of the art CGI technology used in this movie that is frightening how good it is. It is frightening how good that CGI is.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're talking like Marvel level CGI.
Oh yeah,
in this movie, it possibly even better. To be honest, like some of the stuff they pulled off as far as like de-aging is insane.
yeah. Like the fact that in one of the first scenes, Robert De Niro's driving this big ass truck and it's bouncing around, and the frame is stable, but the person inside the frame's moving around, and you never catch glitches. You never see a seam around the face where it's been de-aged, and it looks like him.
Yeah.
It looks like him in his early 30s.
Yeah.
And there's one scene in the conversation they're talking about this, but there's one scene where Joe Pesci is baptizing one of Robert De Niro in the movie's kids, right? And they're talking about the CGI at that point, and they bring this little swipe across the screen like this, so you see his face in the movie, and then it swipes across, and you see his face in real life, and then it swipes back across to his younger face, and it is fucking scary, dude.
Yeah,
it is scary. Number one, Joe Pesci is getting old, bro.
Oh yeah,
he is looking it too.
Yeah, he's looking rough. Yeah. All those fucking Home Alone injuries are taking their toll.
Yeah, they are. I thought I saw the outline of a brick right there on his forehead.
So, I guess just like a quick synopsis of the movie. It basically it's told from the perspective of Frank Sheeran, which is the guy that allegedly claimed to kill Jimmy Hoffa.
Well, he wasn't. He also wasn't the first person. So I think in fact he was about the third person that claimed to kill Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, but this was more like, the way that I understand it, it was almost basically a deathbed confession. He was pretty close to death.
Yeah,
and one of the cops, the investigators, came by and had kind of built up some sort of camaraderie with him. And at the end of the day, he was like, look, everybody's dead. There's no reason to protect anyone. Did you do it? And he allegedly owned up to it. And that's the guy that wrote the book, I guess.
Well, here's the thing. The opening scene gives away some very important clues as to how this story is being told, right? When it opens up, you're walking through a nursing home, you see the watch that was given to him by Jimmy Hoffa, and you see the ring that was given to him by Joe Pesci, right? And then the camera pans around to see Robert De Niro's character sitting there. And if you don't catch on to those things the first time, you definitely catch on to them the second time, because you see that the ring is significant. There's only 3 people that have that ring: the boss, the boss's boss, and him.
Yeah.
Right. Then you have the watch that's a symbolic gift to Jimmy Hoffa from him. Robert De Niro's character is telling the story to the guy who's writing the book. I Hear You Paint Houses.
Yeah.
So understanding the dialogue goes a long way into understanding the story. But there's there's a lot of things that give uh, credibility to this story, right? There's obviously some artistic freedoms taken in some of the the scenes that aren't really as meaningful, as far as like, did Joe Pesci's character really come up and help the dude fix his car, or did he just tell him what to look for? Certain little things like that, there's artistic freedom taken. But for the most part, his story can be verified on multiple counts. The only thing they can't verify is Hoffa's body, and that's because they allegedly burned it.
Right.
So, but his story adds up, and there's a lot of people that would point to Sharon as the actual killer.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense. I mean, he was the only one that had a relationship with Hoffa enough to where he could get close enough to do it, and his guard would be down.
Yeah.
Because Hoffa was kind of paranoid at that point in his life. He thought everybody was coming after him, so it would have been hard for somebody to get the jump on him.
Well, it's because everybody was coming after him.
Well, right. Everybody was coming after him, even the people that he thought would never, So it's a great story. Now, the execution of the film. You said that upon a third viewing, you found things that you weren't a fan of. What about we dive into some of those? Because I also have a couple of things that I wasn't a fan of.
Okay. So let's start with the glaringly obvious.
Okay.
They can de-age these dudes using CGI as much as they want, but they cannot change the way they move, right?
Exactly.
A 30-year-old guy moves different than a 65-year-old guy. It's just the laws of nature, right?
Yeah.
This is not a subjective thing. So this movie forever and ever will herald the worst fight scene of any movie in the history of ever, right?
Yep.
When De Niro goes and pushes the guy out into the fucking street, the kick and the stomp are so bad. It's so obvious that is a 65-year-old guy pretending to be a 30-year-old guy.
Yeah.
That it's not even funny. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it would look completely different. I just turned 38 Saturday. It would look completely different if some asshole at the fucking service station pushed my child.
Yeah.
It would look completely different than that. So, yeah.
It was glaring. Like for me, first viewing. I'm watching the movie. I'm like, wow, this is really good. And then that happened. And like, I had to pause and take a minute. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? How did that get past the cutting room floor? Like, I don't understand. Yeah. It literally looks like Robert De Niro like was like kicking a soccer ball maybe and like threw his hip out. Like,
yeah, like a really bad soccer ball kick.
It was fucking terrible. And it's like, why would you, if you have the ability, like there's something to be said about using your actors when you can, that's great. But if you're going to go ahead and use CGI to de-age everyone, why not just CGI his fucking face onto a 35-year-old's body and let a 35-year-old stuntman do the fucking kicks?
Yeah,
that way
kick
it doesn't
his
look
ass.
Fucking insane.
Yeah, that way it doesn't look horrible like it did.
Yeah. Oh my God. It literally it took me out of the movie for a little bit. I was just like, that's fucking terrible. But I kind of, and there are a couple of moments, even even after the truck, like, yeah, he's driving the truck and everything looks really great. But as soon as he goes to get out of the truck and he walks around the front of the truck, I got that. It almost looked like a floating head thing. I got that a couple of times during, and it's something to do with the neck. Like, I don't know what it is, but when they CGI the face on, there's a point obviously where it has to start being real, right? And it's
Yeah.
just it gives you this floating head look, like the head is not attached to the body as it's walking, and it's probably a combination of the way they're moving and they're, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that, I don't know, it kind of, for as good as they did, it's not 100%.
Yeah.
You know.
Agreed. Agreed. There's definitely some tweaking that needs to be done, but you got to remember, this is first gen technology, right? This is the first generation of this sort of CGI. So imagine 10 years from now,
Oh yeah.
or even 5 years from now. Five
That
years is
movie's
a
essentially
massive.
it's essentially a deep fake, dude.
That's exactly what it is.
I mean, essentially, when you boil it down, that's what it is. It's $150 million deep fake. And I mean, yeah, there's a couple of scenes that we can nitpick. I mean, the kick scene is awful.
Yeah.
It just is. But and you can always nitpick a couple of scenes like I was doing where I said it looks like a floating head or whatever. But if you sit somebody down to watch that movie for the first time, they know nothing about it. For the most part, I think they're going to believe what they're seeing.
Oh
I think
yeah.
they're going to believe that that's a younger De Niro. It
Yeah.
looks like it.
The scene where he's got the two German soldiers digging their own grave,
Oh yeah.
right? That to me, there is no floating head effect with that one because it's a really wide shot. It's a big open area. And when they zoom in on him, and they show him, it's from the waist up, and he's wearing a collared shirt, so it kind of
It hides that.
hides everything below his neck. So the start point has a very defined area where they
Yeah.
can go in and just go, okay, let's start it right here and then go around here.
And then that, like, apparently Scorsese, when they were filming it, he didn't want to have, like, he wanted all the technology to be used, but he didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
So they literally had like a 3-camera rig
Yeah.
that was filming each scene. And
Every scene of that movie was filmed with the main focal camera and then the two depth cameras.
yeah, the digital cameras, and then they
Yep.
had to basically use that as reference points to then recreate all of the CGI stuff, which is
Yep.
just, the technology is insane. And then they were having to jump through hoops to appease Scorsese. So I mean, they did a hell of a job.
Yeah, and they were using infrared markers that were little tiny infrared dots instead of like the green face mask with the little
Right.
tennis balls and shit on it. They were using these little micro dot that were infused, or not infused, but they were planted on their skin and then covered with a base makeup to hide them, to where these actors are so used to having makeup done before they go onto the set anyways, that a little bit of makeup back here is not going to bother them, or a little bit of makeup right around their brow line is not going to bother them. They're already used to that. So you get the sense that that is actually Joe Pesci. That is actually Robert De Niro. That's actually Al Pacino. It's just they look 40 years younger, know? But I think for first gen technology, they did a very, very good job.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think they probably did the best that they could have done. Apart from a few scenes, it's pretty much flawless.
Yeah.
And then my only other issue with the movie really is pacing. I don't think the movie needed to be 3.5 hours long. I don't.
Yeah, I think they could have shortened it up some. They
It
could
could
have.
have been below 3 hours easily.
Yeah, I think it could have been right at 3.
Yeah.
Because I don't think even if you cut, you know, a second, like there's a scene where they get in the car. Joe Pesci shuts the door, and they're in the car, and the wife says, "Can we stop, Frank?" Like that scene could have been cut out, right?
Yeah,
So
and I
that,
get what they're doing. They're trying to show the relationship. I get that, but
yeah,
by the end of the movie, the relationship is established.
mm-hmm.
You know, like De Niro's been killing for this guy for the better part of 4 decades. Like, we get it. He trusts him and they're friends. Like,
Yeah,
you don't have to continuously slam our face into it.
yeah.
Like, that 15, 20 minutes of building the relationship even further, to me, that was fat. That could have been cut.
But to play devil's advocate here, had they cut that, would it have been the same movie? Would it have affected the storyline in some degree, or would it have dropped a key thing or something that was said, like for instance, right, where there's a scene where they are recognizing Frank for all of his accomplishments, and he comes off the stage, and um, and what's his name? Al Pacino is talking to Robert De Niro, and he says, you know, they wouldn't, they wouldn't, and he's like, don't say they wouldn't, don't say they wouldn't dare, don't say they wouldn't dare, like all of that, you know, you could take it out, but the fact that this guy knows, right, at that point that conversation has taken place, De Niro knows he's on the fucking hit list.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to take him out, right?
Yeah.
He's just wondering who's going to get the call to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And I would imagine in the back of his mind, he knows who's going to get the call.
Yeah.
So could that scene have been cut out, looked at as fat and been cut out? Sure. But I think it also establishes that Pacino trusts him enough to sit there and say, these motherfuckers wouldn't dare touch a hair on my fucking head. And he's going, look, man, I'm just telling you. It's the equivalent of me saying, you know, Steven, I'm telling you, Johnny's going to whip your ass.
Right.
And you saying, he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't touch a hair on my face. And me going, okay, dude, I'm just telling you what I already know, and it's going to happen. So don't get in Johnny's face because he's going to whip your ass.
Right.
And you reiterating to me, it kind of establishes that, like, we have the relationship enough to where you can speak freely. You can say shit to me that you wouldn't say to somebody else. And right. I seriously doubt that Jimmy Hoffa would have said that to Harvey Keitel's character, who's like the boss, right? I don't think he would have said that to his face. I don't think he would have pushed that envelope that far.
Yeah, he knew that he trusted Frank.
Yeah, he was in a safe place.
They had to build the relationship dynamic. I get that. I just think it could have been done more efficiently. And I think there is some fat in the movie that I think stood to be trimmed. That's all I'm saying.
But historically, would it be a Scorsese movie if it didn't have some fat in it? It's like a ribeye steak, man. A ribeye steak is not a ribeye if you cut all the fat off of it.
But with that being said, The Departed, which is another Scorsese movie,
mm-hmm.
and personally one of my favorite movies, I don't think there's any fucking fat in that movie.
Yeah, there is.
I don't think so. Watch it again. That movie is I guess 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes, and it fucking starts and it just goes.
Yeah.
And every scene in that movie has to be in that movie for that movie to work. And I get that. I don't have the same feeling after watching this movie. I don't have the same feeling of every scene that I just sat through needed to be in that movie, or else this movie doesn't exist. So that's why I'm saying, to me, there's some stuff that should have been cut out. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying I get it. Like he's a great director.
The beauty of this movie is it's 3.5 hours long, but it carries the story so well. It carries it. Even the stuff that could be conceived as fat. And I agree with you. This is one of those odd instances where I agree with you that they could have cut some stuff. However, even the fat seemed pretty fucking good.
I can give you that.
Because, I mean, it's 3.5 hours, but it carries it a hell of a lot better than Titanic.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so,
yeah.
You know, judging it up against movies in that same kind of, that same kind of time frame, it carries itself very well. And
I just think it also could have done good for the movie, because it's hard to convince people to spend over 3 hours on a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? But it's a very compelling story, right? Like Jimmy Hoffa was this larger than life guy, right? Who was very closed off to the outside. He was very brash and opinionated and loud and boisterous. And this movie also took place over a 45 or 50 year period. Yeah, well, more about 40 years is the time frame on this fucking movie. So I think 3.5 hours for a 40-year plot is pretty damn good, with some very important things that go to establishing the credibility of the book and of the story.
Yeah.
So could it have been done in 2.5 hours? Probably. Would it have been as good at 2.5 hours?
I'd say either do it in 2.5 hours, or if you can't, they should have done like a 2-parter.
Now that wouldn't have been bad, but would you have sat through a 4-hour 2-part?
Probably. If you did 2 hours and like, if you released them at the same time and you did 2 parts, 2 hours apiece, yeah. If I watched the first part and liked it enough, I would watch the second part. Or if I watched the first part and said, that wasn't for me, I've still saved an hour and a half, right?
Yeah, kind of.
So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying, Johnny. I think my point would be, if you could trim enough fat to get it below the 3-hour mark.
I don't think
if you couldn't do that, then it's probably not worth it. But I just think it's a tough sell when you say this movie's over 3 hours long. A lot of people, like, usually 2.5 hours is the fucking cutoff.
I don't know, dude. There's fucking 20 people in here. You know.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it got a hell of a lot of view. I get it. It did well. It's just, I think usually if you can keep a movie under 3 hours long, that's the goal.
Yeah.
It's tough to get people to sit for 3.5 hours.
Well,
and I'd love to know how many people actually watched the entire movie of that 17 million. Right. But I'm just saying, like,
I watched it 4 times.
I don't believe for a second that all 17 million watched.
Oh, no.
You know, a lot of those probably watched an hour and a half and said, fuck this.
Yeah.
So, and plus, again, the whole Hoffa element. Yeah, he's an interesting character, but who really makes up the majority of Netflix? Fucking college kids and 20 to 30-year-old. They don't know who the fuck Jimmy Hoffa is.
Yeah. And I think that was a lot of the reason that this story needed to be done now, because now it seems like, you know, 1940, 1950, 1960, those are like ancient history at this point, you know, at the rate that we're kind of evolving as a society. That's kind of ancient history. So it puts these guys into, and I mean, if you look at the back catalog of most of these guys' work, it's all based around the 50s, 60s, 70s, and sometimes into the early 80s as far as like Goodfellas and stuff. But I mean, it fits they're the guys that you think about when you think mobsters. Because I mean, when you say to me, put together a 5-star cast for a mob movie, I'm going Pacino, I'm going De Niro, I'm going Pesci, I'm throwing in fucking Ray Liotta, I'm throwing in James Gandolfini, God rest his soul. But and I'm putting Martin Scorsese in the fucking director's chair. Like that's the cast I'm going with. Was Ray Liotta in this movie at all?
Ray Liotta, I don't think he was.
I didn't think he was either, which is weird because he's in all the movies.
Yeah.
So, but I know we've got to get out of here at a pretty quick 9:00. So,
yeah, that's kind of, unfortunately, I'm on a new shift, so this can't go late. I have to leave at 9. Yeah.
But that's good to keep us on track and get us to the show on time.
Yeah. So with that, before we get into ratings, just quickly, how does this stack up for you in the terms of like Scorsese's filmography? Do you put it more up towards the top? Is it more middle, or is it at the bottom?
I put it top 5.
Okay.
But I put it in the lower end. It's either 4 or 5.
Okay.
So
for me, it'd go in the top 10.
Okay.
For me.
So I would say top 5. And the only reason I'm giving it top 5, and I don't know, I'll say it's probably in the it's definitely in the top 5, and it's solidly there because he did something that is so far outside of the realm of a Scorsese film in using CGI, especially a first-gen technology like that. I think it added a lot of depth to the story, right? And it gave it a lot of believability, especially the first time I watched it. I was like, Jesus, man, their fucking makeup guy did great. Like, I don't know how much they paid that motherfucker, but it was worth every penny, right? And then come to find out, oh, that's not makeup. That's like Photoshop.
Yeah.
So, but Photoshop in real time, they did it very, very well.
Yeah. So, yeah, for me, I'd say top 10. Scorsese just has such a strong filmography, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm looking at it right now. Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Goodfellas, Casino, Gangs of New York, The Departed, Wolf of Wall Street, Silence. Like, there's...
I get it.
Shit, it's hard to crack the top 5.
Look, I love gangster movies. Like, I love gangster movies. Bronx Tale, Goodfellas, Godfather. Like, the list is 1.5 miles long.
Yeah,
I love gangster movies almost as much as I love horror movies, and I love horror movies. So, if you told me we can watch Friday the 13th Part 1 for the 57,000th time, or we can watch Goodfellas for the 57,000th time, it's going to be a toss-up, dude. You might as well flip a quarter, because one day I'll tell you one, the next day I'll tell you the other.
Yeah.
Or I'll say, let's watch them both back to back. So I love gangster movies. Casino is probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
Casino's fucking great.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. But with that being said, let's go to objective. Let's hit the objective. I wish I had the little thing that flashed up. Objective rating.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, one day.
So, objectively,
yep,
I want to give it somewhere in the ballpark of a 4 to a 4.5.
Okay.
That's kind of where I feel comfortable. I think if it wasn't for that goddamn kicking scene, it would be a 4.5. But that, like, legitimately, it was so bad. Like, I had to pause the movie. I haven't had that in a movie in a really long time where it was, like, literally so bad I had to pause it and be like, God damn.
Yeah.
You know, so it's somewhere between a 4 and a 4.5 is where I'm going to put it comfortably.
Yeah. So, objectively, I'm going to give it a 4.
Okay.
Right? The kicking scene was horrible. Anybody with half of a brain, right, realizes that a guy wearing a suit does not tuck his fucking his tie into his jacket and reach over with a piece of a screwdriver, it wasn't even an entire screwdriver, and fix a timing chain on a truck. Doesn't happen.
Oh,
so there's a lot of things that are proven, and there's a lot of things that there was some artistic freedom taken. The artistic freedom that was taken, I think, is almost a detriment to the movie. So, and by the way, I think them casting Ray Romano as the dickish Buffalino character, like that was fucking great casting. But I think it's going to be a 4 because the things that it did wrong, it did them really wrong. But the things that it did right, it did really right.
Yeah, and the right definitely outweighs the wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Subjectively, I'm gonna go with a 4.5 because I love gangster movies. I think this is one that will definitely stand the test of time, even though it's not. In 20 years, will this story be relevant? I dare to say in the next 30 years, there won't be anybody alive who was alive at the same time as Jimmy Hoffa. So maybe it'll be a resurgent. Maybe it'll become a cult classic or something like that in another 20, 30 years. But, is it something that's going to stand the test of time? Because it has Scorsese's name on it, I think it is. And for that, we'll give it a 4.5. However, that fucking kick scene is so bad, I'm taking a 0.5 point off.
Yeah, for me, subjectively, I'd give it a 4.
Okay.
It's good. It's great. I'd call it great. It's just it doesn't have the replayability of some of Scorsese's other movies.
Absolutely.
In the same vein, like I can watch Goodfellas again for the 100th time, and I'm gonna enjoy it. This, I've watched it twice, and I think it would kind of be a chore to watch it a third time. Honestly, I would enjoy it still, but it's more of it's a little bit more of a chore. The Departed, I've probably seen that movie well over 50 times.
Oh yeah, I do.
And anytime it's on TV, if like I'm flipping through the channels, doesn't matter what part it's at, I'm fucking putting it on there and I'm watching it to the end.
And
right,
just like right now, if I go up there and turn on Netflix and I'm scrolling through and The Departed comes up, I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, or like even like The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah,
that movie does not get as much praise as it fucking deserves.
It absolutely does not.
Phenomenal movie that he did. And that's another one that I can watch 100 times over, and it's not going to feel like a chore. This, I think, after the 4th or 5th time you see it, it's going to be a chore to make yourself watch it again.
Well, what's going to happen is you're going to run into the situation where you're scrolling through and you'll see, Friday the 13th Part 1, and right next to it is The Irishman, and you're going to go, hour and 45 minutes. 3.5 hours.
Yeah,
I'm gonna watch Friday the 13th again.
But with that being said, it is a hell of a movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a hell of a movie. I'd recommend it. And obviously, we don't have to do the must buy, must own or anything, because the beauty is you can fucking watch it for free as long as you have a Netflix account.
Yep.
And in this day and age, if you don't have a Netflix account, you're probably stealing someone's password. So put it to good use and watch the fucking Irishman.
Exactly. Now something I do want you to do at some point, Steven. I want you, because it's only a half hour, I want you to watch The Conversation.
Okay. I'll watch it tonight at work.
I want you to watch The Conversation and just
I'll watch it tomorrow when I'm not at work.
Yeah, I was fixing to say, when you're not handling dangerously high voltages, climbing power lines. But yeah, I want you to watch The Conversation and see if that kind of puts a little bit more of a spin on it. Not that I think it's going to change your rating or anything, but it's definitely a really good insight into the CGI that they used and kind of how they went about the storyline and telling the story. So I think it was also really, really good to watch. So
I'll have to check it out then, but not tonight when I'm at work.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, in case Centerpoint is watching.
Yeah, which they're not because there's only 19 people. But
exactly, I
to
think we'll
those
be
19
fine.
people out there, you all kick
Mike, we got
everyone's
Mike in
ass.
chat asking for a Netflix password.
Yeah.
I got you, Mike. Just hit me up on Messenger.
Yeah, exactly. I think we can get that taken care of, Mike. So, yeah, that's going to do it for tonight's episode of Two Guys in a Trailer, The Irishman. I think we both agree you got to watch it once. You got to watch it once. And then watch it with the sidecar of the conversation. It's really good. So,
and if anything, if you feel like, fuck, I can't do a 3.5 hour movie, watch like an hour and a half of it and take a fucking break. It's going to be on Netflix. You can pause it and then resume watching it whenever you fucking feel like it. It's worth sitting down and watching for at least once.
Yeah, but like I said, it carries the time very well. So you may sit down and be like, I'm entrenched in this story, and like now I've got to see what I mean, obviously, you know what happens. The Hoffa's fucking been gone for 40 goddamn years.
Fucking spoiler alert. God damn, dude. Jesus.
On that note, we'll see you next week where we're watching.
We have no fucking idea. We haven't discussed it at all.
Not even in the slightest. Well, I mean, you've been knocking on death's door. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick something amongst ourselves. We're going to put it up on our Instagram. Our handle is right there, at Two Guys in a Trailer. If you spell it just like that, it doesn't matter about capitals and all that shit. It'll come up. We'll be the first ones you find. So, there you go. Go over there. Tomorrow we'll have a split screen up again for people to vote on. So, yeah, it'll definitely be something modern. It'll more than likely be something on Netflix or Hulu. And, yeah, we'll go from there. So we will see you guys next week. Love, peace, and chicken grease.
Later, guys.